It's a lovely summer day in Croatia, and Beth has just arrived in the country to spend a weekend with her best friend. Her taxi driver Zine is kind and chatty, which Beth appreciates, so she accepts his card after he drops her at the apartment she'll be staying at. Her friend Kate is the one that organized this whole trip, and she's paying for everything with her ex Jay's credit card. To thank her for it, Beth gifts her a black necklace, which has a few loose beads. Later in the evening, before going out, Beth video chats with her husband Rob and their child Aster, who is also Kate's granddaughter. Rob wishes the girls to have a fun night, and on their way out, they bump into the landlord Sebastian, who makes sure they're settling down alright. When they make it to the restaurant, Kate asks for the most expensive dishes on purpose to squeeze Jay dry. Beth feels like a bad friend because she couldn't be there for Kate during her divorce, but Kate understands having a baby got in the way of that and asks Beth how her marriage is doing. Beth wants to say they're doing fine, but actually, her marriage is in a rut and she's unsure what to do, although she thinks Kate's advice to get a divorce is too extreme. When they're done dining, the credit card is rejected, and Kate gets on the phone to argue with Jay about it. The bill's too high for Beth's humble wallet, but Kate accepts to pay for it all. Afterward, they go to a club, and Beth calls Zine to be their driver. When they get there, Kate needs a moment to redo her makeup, so Beth takes the chance to chat with Zine about their experiences as foreigners. Zine is an immigrant from Syria, and Beth is an American living in London. Once Kate is ready, the girls enter the club, and Kate pays for everything again, although Beth still decides to choose water. There are two men looking at them, so Kate drags Beth to sit with them, telling her she needs to get out of her rut and Rob doesn't need to know. They chat and drink with the guys, but as the night passes, Beth feels dizzier and dizzier. Before she realizes what's going on, Beth wakes up at the apartment, not remembering anything that happened last night. After throwing up, she looks for Beth, but she's nowhere to be found. There is proof of a fun night though: open bottles of wine, empty glasses, removed clothes, open wraps of protection, and the jacuzzi is still on. Under a towel, she also finds a broken glass and some drops of blood. Beth tries to contact Kate on her phone the whole morning, to no avail. By noon, she calls Rob to share his worries, but Rob tells her Kate is probably out on her own and asks if they had an argument. Kate says they didn't, although her memories are fuzzy about it. Afterward, she goes to see Sebastian, but he hasn't seen Kate today either. He does however remind her that parties aren't allowed, so he'll have to charge them extra for the two men that came over last night. This is enough for Beth to go to the police, but Officer Pavic doesn't take her seriously and is judgmental of girls who party and drink too much. His superior Kovac tries to check on them, but Pavic sends her away, claiming he can handle this. Pavic explains a report can't be filed until 24 hours pass, so Beth decides to continue on her own and calls Zine, who helps her remember what club they had gone to. At the club, the bartender pretends he doesn't remember the girls, but once Zine speaks aggressively in Croatian, he tells the truth. The two men the girls hanged up with were escorts who come to this bar a lot to catch tourists. Beth guesses Kate must have hired them because she kept insisting Beth needed to get out of her rut. In the evening, Beth calls Rob again, who says Kate ditching Beth to go out with guys is typical behavior of hers and she shouldn't worry. Beth is still sure something happened to Kate because she still hasn't answered a single message, so she informs her husband she's canceling her flight and not going home the next day as planned until Kate shows up. The following morning, Beth uses the names the bartender gave them to find the escorts on social media and asks Zine for help arranging a meeting with them. While waiting for the escorts at a cafe, Beth shares how she met Kate and then Rob through her, and Zine tells her about the wife he lost to the war. When the escorts finally arrive, they run away as soon as they see Beth's face, so Zine runs after them until he catches one and threatens him until he confesses what happened. It turns out the escorts stayed in the apartment only until 3 a.m. because when Kate was distracted, they stole her bag and escaped. He also swears they didn't put anything in the girls' drink because they don't need it, they're professionals getting paid. The bag was pawned, and the man gives them the address of the shop. Beth gets the bag and the phone back, but she still thinks the escort slipped something in their drinks because she never gets that drunk and she only had water. Zine doesn't think it makes sense because they didn't rob Beth as well, so perhaps it was Kate that made her drink to make Beth finally relax and have fun. Now that a day has passed, Beth goes back to the police, promising Zine she won't mention his name so he doesn't lose his visa. This time, Kovac files Beth's report and scolds Pavic for not doing his job. She also sends him away when he keeps judgmentally poking at Beth's story. Beth doesn't tell them about the phone, but she does give them the bag and the escorts' names. Kovac wonders if Beth could have been assaulted, so after taking her testimony, she's brought to the hospital to run some tests. Afterward, Beth calls Jay, who just like Rob thinks this is Kate just being her dramatic self. He also denies having talked to her because all communication can only be done through their lawyers, and he doesn't know anything about a credit card. Then, Beth returns to the apartment and finds Sebastian there packing up their stuff because checkout time has passed. When Beth mentions she still isn't leaving the country, Sebastian offers her a cheap room he has downstairs. Once she's settled down, she leaves Kate's phone charging and takes a nap. By the time she wakes up, she can finally try to use Kate's phone, but sadly it requires Face ID to unlock. Sebastian comes to see Beth and asks her if she wants to dine together, but she turns him down and calls Zine instead. When they're about to leave for a restaurant, Beth is surprised by Rob, who decided to fly in because it's just a 2-hour trip and left Astor with a babysitter for the night. Zine leaves them to have their privacy, and a jealous Rob makes a scene, scolding Beth for trusting a random taxi driver. This upsets Beth, who starts crying, so Rob apologizes and comforts her while hearing the whole story of what happened. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by a call from the police bringing bad news. They've found Kate dead. Kate goes with Rob to identify the body and learns Kate has drowned, but they need an autopsy before deciding if it was an accident or murder. The next morning, Rob feels bad for not having been nicer to Kate because he found her annoying. He also wonders if he should stay longer, but Beth prefers him to go back to London to take care of their daughter while she finishes things here. Later, Pavich picks her up and confirms Kate was murdered. They can't tell if she was assaulted as well though, because of the state of the body and the fact she got busy with multiple men before her death. Beth requests to see Kate again to say her final goodbye, and when Pavich gives her a moment of privacy, she takes out the phone and uses her friend's dead face to unlock it. Afterward, she pretends to need the bathroom to look at Kate's messages. Among Beth's missed calls, there are a bunch from a number saved as handyman, so Beth calls it only to discover Rob's voicemail. She hangs up and checks the text messages to confirm her worries. Kate and Rob had been having an affair, although Kate's last messages are curious. First, she asks Rob to dump Beth, but then she asks him to stop texting her. Pavich takes Beth to the police station, where Kovac shares the investigation results. They've found traces of illegal substances in both Beth's and Kate's blood. They've also questioned the escorts. They denied using those substances in their job, and they had solid alibis for the time of the murder. A taxi driver picked them up at Beth's apartment. People at the club said they saw Beth and Kate arguing, but Beth denies it, even if she isn't totally sure. The cops are starting to suspect Beth, so when Pavich drives her back, he takes Beth's passport and leaves Sebastian his card. Sometime later, Beth calls Jay, who admits he knew about the affair and didn't say anything because Beth was having the baby. The affair had only started a few months ago though, and Jay reminds Beth that before Rob got together with her, he and Kate spent one drunken night together. To distract herself, Beth has dinner with Zine and shares a new theory. Maybe Kate slipped something in her drink so she would have an affair and Rob would leave her. When she returns to the apartment, Rob calls Beth to check on her, and Beth confesses she knows about the affair. Rob tries to apologize, saying it didn't mean anything, but Beth keeps yelling at him because the police think she killed Kate, and if the cops learn about the affair, they'll assume it was her motive. The next day, Beth is arrested for Kate's murder. The police have photos of her dinner with Zine, who apparently is part of a gang involved in human trafficking. They think Beth hired him to kill Kate because of her affair with Rob, and they'll be talking to Jay later as well. Finding herself in a corner, Beth asks for a lawyer, who explains they haven't charged her yet because they don't have enough evidence and they were hoping she would break. Beth returns to her apartment and finds Zine there, who got in because Sebastian let him. Zine had been interrogated as well, but they had to let him go because he had been working at the time of the murder, and the taxi app tracks everything. He also explains that the only connection he has with the gang is having received the help of a smuggling ring that takes refugees out of the country and gets them visas, but he doesn't work with them. After he leaves, Beth wonders how the cops found out about the affair and remembers that Pavich gave Sebastian his card. She checks the mirror and finds a hidden camera, which probably recorded her conversation with Rob. She goes looking for Sebastian, and while making small talk, she waits for him to be distracted to steal his keys. After Sebastian leaves, Beth uses his keys to enter his private studio and finds out there are cameras hidden in the whole building, spying on people even in the shower. Beth finds the recording of the night of the murder and checks to finally see what happened. It seems she passed out in the bar, because the escorts brought her in their arms and left her in her bed to sleep before going to Kate to have some fun together. As soon as she got distracted, they stole her bag and ran out of the building to take a taxi. When Kate discovered she had been robbed, she left as well, breaking a glass on her way.